I think there is no such thing as a little bit of corruption. There must also always be freedom of speech. The Netherlands is also keen on supporting Moldova. I'm very glad you mentioned the LGBTI community.
Ambassador, first of all, welcome to our studio, and I think it's appropriate to say welcome to Moldova also.
Thank you so much, Olga. It's a pleasure to be here. It's a pleasure to have arrived here in Moldova.
And first of all, I'd like to ask you about why are you here as an ambassador? Because beforehand we had only an office of Netherlands in Chisinau, and now you've opened a whole embassy. Why was it necessary? Why now? And was it somehow provoked by the situation in Ukraine?
Opening an embassy is indeed upgrading our diplomatic relations to the highest possible level. It is a relationship between Moldova and the Netherlands that has grown ever since Moldova's independence. And more people and people contacts brought the need for an embassy office in 2016. And this relationship has grown. Of course, with Moldova's candidate status and its accession path to the European Union, these contacts are even more intensified. Plus, the Netherlands is also keen on supporting Moldova in these difficult circumstances at the moment. So this is all part of a process, and for me it's a big honor to be the first resident ambassador here in Chisinau.
But what do you think, what exactly will change in Netherlands-Moldova relationship after the opening of the embassy?
We will have a slightly bigger team. I presume that with my presence here we will also have more intensified contacts. And the role of an embassy is really to bring people together, also to ensure that there are programming possibilities for cooperation. So I think all of that will hopefully intensify our relationship. We are already doing a lot, but I expect we can do more.
But what will be your priorities, for example?
Well, our priority at the moment is really to help Moldova through its reform process. So we have priorities in the field of energy security, in the field of protection against cyber threats, and also in the field of justice reform. We are very active in the field of human rights. Human dignity is very close to the priorities of our foreign policy, and of course also commercial ties.
What do you think, after this year of terrible war in Ukraine, what are the main risks for Moldova? Because of course we see that Russian army isn't succeeding at all in Ukraine, but still we have Transnistrian region with Russian troops on its territory, and we've already had fully blown pro-Russian campaign in Gagauzia during the elections.
Yes, Russia's aggression against Ukraine is creating incredible suffering in Ukraine, and it's also affecting Moldova deeply. Of course, we've seen Moldova opening its borders for hundreds of thousands of refugees from Ukraine. And that has been noticed, I think, by the whole world, how heartwarming and open Moldovans receive these refugees in their homes. Moldova is also hurt, I think, economically. And at the same time, fortunately, Moldova has a government that's very persistent in modernizing the country. That's on a path to reform different aspects of society. So yes, there are threats, hybrid threats, and many countries, including the Netherlands, the European Union, are helping Moldova.
But Russian aggression in Ukraine opened a question of freedom of speech for, I think, a lot of countries, including Moldova. And there was a huge discussion in our country about how can we combine freedom of speech principle with combating the propaganda. And present government was criticized like a lot for example, closing several TV stations because of they spread some kind of propaganda. What do you think, how can we define the limits of freedom of speech in a time of war as a country being near the war?
Yes, that's a very good question. I think it's a dilemma. I understand Moldova has an audiovisual council that has a role to play, and it must play it independently, but it must also act actively. It must have the means as well to do so. So we as the Netherlands, we have supported the council with tools so that they can monitor also the media in a faster way, so that they can act when they see serious disinformation. And they can be a threat to society, so they must be acted upon. At the same time, there must also always be freedom of speech. So it is a dilemma, and you need expert people doing their job in an integer manner with the tools to do so.
But what do you think? Should we bring maybe some external experts for that? Because local experts sometimes are very involved in the whole process and can be a little bit biased, maybe.
Perhaps. I think first and foremost, Moldova is a sovereign country. It has to make its own choices. But we, the Netherlands, the European Union, and many other countries are there to help and assist. So, for example, in the field of energy security, we received a request for an expert. And since October 21, when there was a real crisis in dealing with gas supplies, this expert was there to be able to help buy gas on the spot market, for example. So yes, in many fields there are possibilities to cooperate.
Mm-hmm. You've also mentioned that Netherlands supported for like several years at least justice sector reform, but it still remains one of the most opened for criticism, and we have still sabotage from the inside of judiciary. We have questionable decisions, and even the pre-vetting system writes some brows in our society. What do you think, what should we focus on for now, and what are the exact plans of Netherlands in terms of support of this reform?
Yeah, I think you're raising a key element, I think, in the modernizing of Moldova. A free democratic society needs an independent, integer legal system, judiciary that you can rely upon. So I fully understand that this government is reading very closely the recommendations of the Venice Commission, who have experts and have recommended to act. And the pre-vetting that is taking place, where judges are screened, I think is key, a key step. There's been an independent commission called upon. And Moldovan government also invited external experts, as you mentioned, Olga. And we as the Netherlands, since the justice reform is so important and an integer legal system is so important for any country, we said, okay, we will help finance this one-time exercise with some financial support. But we've also brought forward an expert, a judge from the Netherlands, Herman van Hebel, who's also chairing this committee. So I'm very pleased to see that now the pre-vetting of the judges is being finalized, that the pre-vetting of the public prosecutors for the councils is now advancing and probably finishing in the summer. This is, of course, the beginning. The next step will be vetting the judges, and I presume there are many more aspects in the legal system that will require attention in the future, and we will be there to listen to the needs of Moldova.
But after the pre-vetting procedure, a lot of people had the impression that we soon will not have judges like at all, because not many candidates went successfully through this process. What do you think about it? Can we measure our standards just as high as in the European Union? Because for a lot of years this system was corrupt, and it's a very good possibility that we won't have any judges at all if we just finalize the contracts. And
I understand your question. I think yes, it's a tough process, and I think the fact that not everybody passed the barriers is because they are serious barriers, and you need these serious barriers to have also a serious reform. So I understand there's a good number of candidates that have passed these screenings, and but not everybody. And yeah, I think it's also important that you start somewhere and that you are really clear on what you find important. I think there is no such thing as a little bit of corruption. There is only corruption and no corruption. So, of course, in a society which has gone through many changes and some things were not as clear as they could have been today, if you go back 15 years, okay, I can understand you have to look at it in a careful manner, but my impression is that's exactly what is being done, and that this is an important and also a good step. So I'm hopeful that this is going in the right direction, but yeah, not everybody passes, unfortunately.
Unfortunately, very often our society expects some quick results, very obvious results, but can we expect that from the justice system reform? And how many years we're talking about?
Speed is about expectation, and my impression is that the vetting, the pre-vetting process has been done in a professional manner, in a manner that is not too fast and not too slow. So it's bringing the results, and I think that's what matters most in order to move on.
And you've mentioned that Netherlands, and we know it on our own experience, supported human rights area in Moldova for a lot of years, and especially LGBT community in Moldova. We remember projects like movie festival, Queer Voices, Media Bang Bang about queer people. But still Moldova remains for this day a very homophobic country. The situation maybe changes from place to place, but in general, here we are. What do you think, what we still lack in this area, and what can we do to raise some tolerance in our society? Especially for now, we are EU candidates and still very so-called traditional country.
Yes, I'm very glad you mentioned the LGBTI community. You're right. It's very close to the priorities of our embassy. And you mentioned a few organizations like Bang Bang that we support. I think what they need is dialogue and recognition. And so we as an embassy are also supporting dialogue between the community and authorities. And our impression is that it's hopeful in the sense that it creates a better understanding and also a better understanding of what needs to be done in terms of legislation. So there cannot be such a thing as hate speech. And of course, this is true for everybody. So I think through helping vulnerable communities, we are helping the whole society. And this is a process, I think, that's going in the right direction, step by step. I think freedom of assembly should also mean that the community can organize the Pride walk in Chisinau, and so many other aspects I think are helpful step by step. But this challenge is true for many societies. Also in the Netherlands, this is something we have to work on continuously. So I understand that there's some work to do in Moldova, but I think it's on track.
But unfortunately, we often hear that now is not the time to speak about such minorities, because we have economy which declined a lot since the start of the war and even since the start of pandemic. We have a lot of problems with security, so now it's not the time to talk about human rights and LGBT especially. What can you answer to it?
Well, I fully understand that people are looking at their energy bills, and I think the economic resilience, or let's say a better economy, is also key to a better future. And countries like the Netherlands have a very thriving business community. So it's certainly the intention of myself and my embassy to also work with the business community, with entrepreneurs. And at this stage, I really want to listen also to them, to understand better what they are facing, whether it is in terms of business climate, legislation, or perhaps market structure. I think there's a lot we can do. But I would add that also for entrepreneurs, a fair and legal system is important. So they sign a contract, it must be able to be enforced in court. They must trust also the legal system. And with doing business also comes freedom. You need to be free to be creative, to be an entrepreneur. So this aspect of human rights and economic development is very closely linked together. So to say now is not the time to talk about human rights is to say now is not the time to talk about modernity in terms of also development. So I think it is important to do both at the same time.
But what do you think? Should our politicians, our leaders, be somehow involved in this dialogue publicly? Because even pro-European parties in Moldova I can't say that I'm afraid, but they're very silent sometimes about LGBT issues because it can decline their ratings among the people. Should they be more active in this field?
I'm not setting the agenda of politicians. They can set their own agenda. I think that's also where not only Moldova is sovereign, but also politicians are sovereign in that sense. But I would say I would welcome voices that support vulnerable communities, not only the LGBTI community, but perhaps also other communities like the Roma community. And I think the European future also offers a space for all minorities, for all ethnic communities, for all languages. So I think that's part of a narrative that I would really welcome to hear.
And aside from the LGBT plus community, what problems in human rights area do you see in Moldova now, and what will be the priorities of the embassy?
I think fighting the hyper threats that we talked about are important. I think free media is very important. On the ombudsman we can work, the Equality Council. So I think there are many aspects that in the field of human rights we can work together. It's vast. So
That's true.
We also focus a little bit, and there are other donors who are also active. So we communicate with each other. Yes.
In the previous interviews, we've asked your colleagues when Moldova will become a candidate to the EU, and now we became. And now is the question when Moldova will be the EU member for real. Are we talking about decades or something can force this integration process? Because there are a lot of speculations, estimations of different politicians, and we hear a lot of different things. What do you think about?
I think it's, well, first of all, I'd like to say I'm hopeful, and I think the fact that Moldova has obtained candidate status is a major political decision by the European Union, not to be underestimated. It really means that all countries in the EU, also the Netherlands, see Moldova as part of the European family, as part of becoming a member of the EU. That's what it means. But to become actually an EU member, there is a lot of work to do. Because in the end, the EU exists out of a treaty, and in order to implement it, you need a society that can do it. You need a proper justice system, but also the public administration needs to be in order. There are many laws that need to be adopted and implemented, so that also the countries in the European Union can see that the law is respected. And so the next step for Moldova and also for Ukraine is to fulfill the conditions that the European Commission has put on paper. For Moldova there are 9, and many of them, the majority, are related to the justice reform, which underlines again how important it is. So then if in fall there is a positive evaluation from the Commission, the next step can be taken and accession negotiations can start. And then, depending on the progress itself, it can be swift or not so swift. And sometimes countries remain sovereign, so countries can also decide differently, as we have seen in some cases. So it's difficult to put an end date to it at this stage, because we are at the beginning. But I'm very hopeful.
Mm-hmm. But what do you think, what are the main maybe obstacles of Moldova becoming a member state? Can we name Transnistria, for example, as such?
Well, I think there are many steps. So I think it's not fair to just pinpoint one or a particular one. There are really many steps and many fields. I mean, I think there's 33 chapters that's covering society. But at this stage, I would say the justice reform is absolutely key. Like I mentioned, out of the 9 conditions, the majority are related to aspects of justice reform. And the second one I would mention is the public administration reform. So you need also civil servants, the ministries, authorities that are up to the task to manage the EU legislation and also implement it.
Mm-hmm. But in what will should consist this administrational reform? What is the main dots here?
I think capacity building is important. For example, in the field of finance, the Netherlands is supporting the capital markets infrastructure, financial education, supervision of the financial markets. So it's just an example, but I think that's the kind of examples that you have to think of.
Mm-hmm. I cannot not ask you. We write a lot about transnational settlement process, and a lot of experts say that now it's like a window of opportunity to reintegrate the country, to change this status quo, to really do the change. What do you think about it? Can you see this opportunity, and how Moldovan authorities should use it?
Yes, I think both sides should absolutely engage and also take stock of where, let's say, the world is at the moment. And things have changed substantially. And so my suggestion is really to sit together and to create building blocks of a solution. because obviously it is a complex issue, otherwise it would already have been solved.
That's true. And maybe as a conclusion, where can you see Moldova in 5 years from now?
I really hope that the track that Moldova has chosen, which is a European track, which is becoming part of the European family, can be seen in society, that it is noticed that citizens feel this sense of hope, of wealth, of freedom, of justice. That's what I hope, and I can see it. But you're right. There's a lot to be done.